Anti-American sentiment, where U.S. expats report feeling unwelcome. Hey everyone. So you're dreaming of that big adventure, right? Maybe it's sipping espresso in a quaint European cafe, exploring ancient ruins in South America, or finding your zen in Southeast Asia. The idea of living abroad, really living somewhere else, is exciting. It promises new cultures, new foods, new friends, and a fresh perspective on life, and maybe even on our own country. Many of us Americans have that wanderlust bug, that desire to see what's beyond our shores, maybe even set up shop somewhere completely different for a while, or forever. But let's pump the brakes for a second and talk about something that doesn't always make it into the glossy travel brochures or the Instagram feeds: anti-American sentiment. It's a real thing. While most places in the world are incredibly welcoming, and most people you meet will be curious and friendly, there are spots and situations where being American might draw some negative attention. It's not something to panic about, but it is something to be aware of if you're planning on traveling extensively or becoming an expat. This isn't about scaring anyone off. Far from it. The world is amazing, and the experiences you gain abroad are priceless. This is about being informed, managing expectations, and understanding the world as it is, not just as we wish it were. We're going to dive into where some fellow Americans living overseas have reported feeling less than welcome. Why this might happen, what it can look like, and most importantly, how to navigate it. Think of this as a friendly heads-up from one American traveler to another. Why does anti-American sentiment even exist? Let's be real. Before we talk about where, let's touch on the why. Understanding the roots can help us process it if we encounter it. There isn't one simple answer, and often it's a mix of things. 1. Us foreign policy. This is probably the biggest driver. Let's face it, our government's actions around the globe, wars, political interventions, drone strikes, trade policies, alliances, environmental stances, have a huge impact, and not everyone sees those actions positively. In some regions, decades of U.S. involvement have left deep scars or ongoing resentment. People might associate you, as an individual American, with policies you might personally disagree with. It's often not personal against you, but against the flag you represent. 2. Cultural differences and stereotypes. Sometimes it's less about politics and more about culture clashes. Americans can sometimes be perceived, fairly or unfairly, as loud, demanding, culturally insensitive, overly casual, or flaunting wealth. Think about the ugly American stereotype. It exists for a reason, even if it only applies to a minority. Things we consider normal, like directness in conversation, tipping practices, or even our portion sizes, can seem strange or offensive elsewhere. 3. Media portrayal. Both how foreign media portrays the U.S. and how American media, movies, TV shows, portrays American life can create stereotypes. People might have preconceived notions based on Hollywood or news headlines, leading to assumptions about your beliefs, wealth, or behavior. 4. Economic factors. America's economic powerhouse status can breed resentment. Globalization, outsourcing, the dominance of American brands. These can be sore points in countries feeling left behind or exploited. Sometimes, seeing relatively wealthy American tourists or expats can trigger feelings of inequality or frustration. 5. Plain old xenophobia or nationalism. Sometimes it's not even specifically anti-American. Some people or cultures are just generally wary of or hostile towards foreigners, any foreigners. Strong nationalist movements can also fuel suspicion of outsiders. 6. Specific events or administrations. Sentiment can fluctuate based on current events or who is leading the U.S. government. A particularly controversial policy or presidential statement can cause a temporary spike in negative feelings abroad. It's complicated, right? Often the person giving you the cold shoulder might be reacting to a mix of these things, or maybe they're just having a bad day. The key is not to take it too personally, while still acknowledging that these feelings exist for reasons that are often bigger than any one individual. So, where are we talking about? Insights from the expat grapevine. Okay, let's get to the heart of it. Where have American expats reported encountering friction? It's crucial to preface this with a huge caveat. Experiences vary wildly. You could live in a country often cited as having anti-American sentiment and have nothing but wonderful interactions. Your neighbor, however, might have a different story. It depends on the city, the neighborhood, your job, your social circle, your language skills, your attitude, and sheer luck. This isn't a definitive blacklist. Instead, think of these as regions or types of situations where some Americans have shared stories of feeling unwelcome based on expat forums, blogs, and general reports over the years. Parts of the Middle East. This probably isn't a huge surprise given the history of U.S. political and military involvement in the region. While hospitality is a deeply ingrained cultural value in many Middle Eastern countries, and many locals make a clear distinction between the American government and American people, political tensions can definitely spill over. You might encounter intense political discussions, suspicion, or outright hostility in some areas, particularly those directly impacted by conflict or U.S. policy. However, many expats also report incredibly warm welcomes and deep friendships here. It's highly variable. Certain countries in Latin America. Again, history plays a big role. Decades of U.S. intervention, support for controversial regimes, and economic policies have created deep-seated distrust in some nations south of the border. While many Latin American cultures are known for their warmth and openness, you might encounter political debates, critical comments about U.S. influence, or a general coolness, especially in countries with strong leftist or nationalist governments or a painful history involving the U.S. Parts of Western Europe. Yes, really. This might surprise some people. We often think of Europe as culturally similar and generally friendly, and it mostly is. But anti-American sentiment can exist here too, though it often takes a different form. It might be less about overt hostility and more about condescension, intellectual snobbery, or pointed critiques of American culture, politics, or perceived lack of sophistication. Think eye rolls when you order a Coke, unsolicited lectures on foreign policy, or jokes about American ignorance. France, and sometimes Germany or Spain, are places where expats occasionally report these kinds of subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, put-downs. Often it's tied to disagreements over specific U.S. policies, like the Iraq War or environmental stances, or a general feeling that American culture is shallow or overwhelming. Russia and China. Given the geopolitical rivalries, it's understandable that Americans might face suspicion or a cooler reception in these countries, particularly during times of heightened tension. While individual interactions can still be positive, the official government narratives often paint the U.S. in a negative light, which can influence public opinion. Bureaucratic hassles might also be more common. Major tourist hotspots globally. Sometimes the friction isn't strictly anti-American, but anti-tourist, and Americans just happen to be a very visible group of tourists. In cities overwhelmed by mass tourism, think Venice, Barcelona, Prague, locals might feel frustrated by crowds, rising prices, and disrespectful behavior. While they might not single out Americans specifically, loud groups, ignorance of local customs, or perceived arrogance can lead to poor service, scams, or general unfriendliness directed at tourists, among whom Americans are often numerous. Areas with recent political flare-ups. Anywhere in the world where a recent event has put the U.S. in a negative light locally, e.g., a controversial political statement, a damaging news story, a specific foreign policy decision impacting that region, might experience a temporary surge in negative sentiment. Important reminder. Again, this is not exhaustive and not predictive. You could have the time of your life in any of these places. Conversely, you could encounter an unpleasant individual anywhere, even in countries considered overwhelmingly friendly to Americans, like Ireland or the Philippines. What does feeling unwelcome actually look like? It's not always dramatic confrontations. Often it's more subtle. The cold shoulder. Being ignored by service staff, getting curt responses, a general lack of warmth or friendliness that others seem to receive. Subtle annoyance. Eye-rolling, sighing, muttered comments, sometimes just loud enough for you to hear. Unsolicited political debates. Being drawn into arguments about U.S. policy, sometimes aggressively, even by strangers. Stereotyping. People making assumptions about you based on American stereotypes. Rich, ignorant, gun-loving, etc. Condescension. Being talked down to, especially regarding culture, history, or politics. Service issues. Being deliberately overcharged, tourist price. Receiving poor service in restaurants or shops. Facing unusual difficulties with bureaucracy compared to locals or other foreigners. Overt hostility. This is rarer for the average traveler or expat, but can include direct insults, yelling, or, in very rare and extreme cases, threats. Most often, it's the accumulation of small, subtle things that can make an expat feel weary or isolated, rather than one big dramatic event. Counterpoint, the world is mostly welcoming. Now, after all that, let's bring it back to reality. The vast majority of people you meet around the world will be welcoming, curious, or at worst, indifferent. Many cultures place a huge emphasis on hospitality. Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, etc. Often cited by expats as incredibly welcoming and friendly. Mexico and parts of Central America. Despite political rhetoric sometimes, on a person-to-person level, Americans often report feeling very welcome. Ireland, Portugal, Italy. Known for their warmth and generally positive disposition towards Americans. Many places. Honestly, most countries don't have widespread, intense anti-American sentiment that affects daily life for expats. The key is that individual interactions are king. Your attitude and behavior play a huge role. How to be a good ambassador and have a better time. So, how do you navigate this potential bump in the road? It's mostly common sense and good manners. 1. Learn the lingo. Even just basic phrases, hello, thank you, excuse me, in the local language go a long way. It shows respect and effort. 2. Know before you go. Understand local customs and etiquette. How do people greet each other? What are the norms around dining, dress, public behavior? Avoid being the loud American. Dress modestly where appropriate. 3. Be humble and respectful. You're a guest in their country. Listen more than you talk. Don't constantly compare things unfavorably to how they are back home. Show genuine interest in their culture. 4. Avoid sensitive topics. Unless you know someone well, steer clear of heated discussions about local politics, religion, or U.S. foreign policy. You're unlikely to change anyone's mind, and it can quickly turn unpleasant. 5. Don't be a walking stereotype. Be mindful of the volume of your voice. Be polite to service staff. Don't flaunt wealth. Tip according to local customs, not necessarily U.S. standards. 6. Stay informed, not obsessed. Be aware of current events and local sensitivities, but don't assume everyone you meet dislikes you because of your nationality. 7. Connect locally. Try to make friends with locals, not just other expats. It enriches your experience and helps break down barriers and stereotypes on both sides. 8. Develop a thicker skin. If you do encounter negativity, try not to take it too personally. Remember the potential reasons behind it. Sometimes just letting a snide comment roll off your back is the best approach. 9. Focus on the positive. Don't let one bad interaction sour your entire experience. Remember all the good encounters and the reasons you wanted to be abroad in the first place. Expat versus tourist. It's worth noting that expats who live and work in a country might experience sentiment differently than short-term tourists. Tourists are often somewhat insulated in tourist zones. Expats integrate more, deal with bureaucracy, work alongside locals, and might face more sustained scrutiny or deeper cultural clashes over time. The bottom line: living or traveling abroad as an American is an incredible opportunity. Yes, anti-American sentiment exists in some corners of the world, driven by complex historical, political, and cultural factors. Being aware of this isn't about being fearful. It's about being prepared and mindful. The overwhelming majority of experiences Americans have abroad are positive. The connections you make, the perspectives you gain, and the personal growth are invaluable. By being a respectful, humble, and informed guest, you can minimize potential friction and act as a positive ambassador for our country, one interaction at a time. Don't let the possibility of negativity deter you from exploring this amazing planet. Just go with open eyes and an open mind. What about you? Have you traveled or lived abroad as an American? Where did you go? Did you ever encounter anti-American sentiment, or was it smooth sailing? What are your tips for navigating cultural differences? Share your experiences and thoughts in the comments below. We can all learn from each other. If you found this article helpful or thought-provoking, please give it a like, share it with friends who might be interested, and consider subscribing for more insights on travel and expat life. Stay safe and happy travels.